in Proverbs in chapter 26. Continuing on from our study last week, we made it through verse 3. And we opened up last week's Bible study telling you the outline and how that verses 1 through 12, God, through the writings of Solomon, is dealing with foolish people. Foolish people. So tonight we're going to try to get through verse 12 so we can move on to the next topic here in chapter 26. But we left off verse 3, a whip for the horse, a bridle for the ass, and a rod for the fool's back. We were talking about how that the horse and the ass, or the cousin to the donkey, represent two kinds of people. Two kinds of people. The horse representing the kind of people who always have to be whipped and brought into line because they can't control themselves. The other, talking about those who only need a bridle. The donkey who only needs a bridle, can be stubborn, but only needs a bridle to be brought into subjection to God. The question was, which one of these describe your life? And then a rod for the fool's back. We talked about how that all they understand is pain. Not that they even understand it. It's just that it keeps them from causing more problems. Some people, you'll never get them to understand anything. All you can do is limit their destruction. And that's all you can do. Let's move on now to verse number 4. Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest thou also be like unto him. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own conceit. Now the point of these verses is that ultimately you cannot reason with a foolish person. You cannot reason with them. The fool spoken of here, now I want to expand this a little bit. Because one thing that I really try to do in teaching is that I try to help us not to fall into the trap of thinking, well, that's talking about someone else. I'm not a fool. Just ask me. I'll tell you. So, we tend to think, well, Solomon's just talking about people who go around causing problems all the live long day. But the fool spoken of here is not only someone who's loud, obnoxious, and not self-aware. That's not all a fool is when it speaks of in the biblical sense. The word fool is defined in the Bible in Psalm 14, verse 1. Psalm 14, verse 1. The fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. They have done abominable works. There is none that doeth good. Okay, we know that Paul references that in the book of Romans. But I want to take the first half of Psalm 14:1. The fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. And when you look at that verse, you notice that the words there is are in italics. Now, if you know anything about the way the Bible was translated and written, in the Hebrew and Greek, they do not construct their sentences the same way we do in English. And so the translators would add words so that we could understand it better. And those words are in italics to make it easier to understand in English. So if you were to read it this way, it's been shared that the verse could also read, the fool hath said in his heart, no, God. The fool hath said in his heart, no, God. Yeah. So if we're to look at it that way, how could we define a fool? Just someone who's loud, obnoxious, always arrogant and out of line? No. It's anyone who says no to God's ways.
That's right.
In any way. Puts on a little bit different spin, doesn't it?
Yes, sir.
That right there should make us want to say yes to God a little bit more.
Amen.
Because the Bible defines this to be what a fool is. So obviously, someone who can look around this great creation and see all these complexities going on and say there is no God, they're foolish, they're ignorant, they don't know how to look deeper into things past their own opinions. But also the person who says no to God is a fool. That's a biblical fool. Let's go on here now. Back to Proverbs 26:4. Now that we understand really what a fool means here. If you do not answer the foolish person, and in context here, it is talking about someone who's loud and obnoxious and not self-aware. But I just wanted to expand your mind a little bit about how God looks at fools, what a fool is to God. But in context, it is talking about that loud, obnoxious fool who is not paying attention even to themselves. If you do not answer them, they will think they are wise and have left you speechless by their great wisdom. They will think they're wise. Oh, you got nothing to say, huh? They think they're wise. If you do answer them, they think you're a fool because you're acting in an argumentative, foolish way with them. Even though you're doing the exact same thing they're doing, they're just not what? Self-aware. They're not self-aware. So you can return to someone the very same facial features, obnoxious ways. They'll think you're acting crazy even though you're acting like them. People who are not self-aware operate that way. The idea of these verses is this. If you're going to answer a foolish person who does not have the capacity to be anything other than foolish, two things here you need to be able to do if you're going to engage with them at all. Number one, do not do it in the same way that they do. What does he say in verse 4? Answer not a fool according to his folly. Don't do it in the same way they do. In other words, get loud thinking volume wins, acting obnoxiously rather than admitting they're wrong. A fool, when they're proven wrong, they just get louder and more obnoxious rather than admitting they're wrong. Don't use harsh or cursing words when their arguments don't hold up. Don't do that like they do. Loud and obnoxious and cursing and harsh words when their arguments don't hold up. So that's number one. He tells us verse 4, don't do it in the way they do it. Number two, understand that your goal is not to reason with them or to get them to understand something. Now, this right here is where a lot of people just miss the boat. They just don't get it. A lot of people want to get into arguments with people, but they don't know this second part. Understanding that if you're engaging with, and when I'm talking about engaging, I mean you're literally engaging in a conversation, trying to reach a conclusion. If you know this person to be an obnoxious, foolish person, secondly, if before you even get into it, understand you're not really even trying to convince them or reason with them. Sometimes the reason you would engage with them is at least to show others around them how foolish that person is, so as to equip those who are nearby so they don't get negatively affected by that person. Did you catch that?
Yes, sir.
Many times, if you're going to engage a foolish person, the point should be not to reason with them or convince them. It's to let everybody know and expose everyone around them without saying it this way. But in other words, have ways of exposing them to where everybody, you kind of say, you see how foolish they are? And you basically put them in a corner. You get them to label themselves, because a fool doesn't take long to label themselves. The Bible talks about how they open their mouth wide. Okay, they don't take long to label themselves. So if you're going to engage with them, number one, don't do it the same way they do. Number two, your goal should not be to reason with them. Your goal should be to let everybody else around them see how foolish they are. These two things the things I just gave you, should never be attempted. Okay, Christian, I'm going to teach you how to be smart here, okay? Teach you how to be smart. These two things should never be attempted by someone who is not already skilled at dealing with foolish people. Because a fool is not someone who's dumb. Okay, you have to understand that. They may not be intellectually dumb. They may be. I've met a lot of people who just don't know anything, but they just keep pushing things that they think is true, and even though it's absolutely provable not true, okay, there is that. But I'm talking about you can be a foolish person and have a PhD. It's an attitude thing, isn't it? It's a spirit. It's a motive thing. So these two things should never be done by someone who is not already skilled at dealing with foolish people, because a fool is not someone who's dumb necessarily. It's simply someone who's not self-aware and does not want to be. They don't want to be self-aware of how ignorant they may be of some facts. Ignorant doesn't mean dumb. Ignorant means you don't know, but they don't want to know. They don't want to see how obnoxious they operate. They don't want to see how they are. So if you're not someone who has already got some skills dealing with people like that, it's better that you don't even engage with them. Therefore, that fool may actually outwit you if you're not someone who knows how to deal with them. Here's what I mean by that. Going back to the second point I made. If you're going to engage with someone who has already proven themselves to be someone who doesn't listen and doesn't want to listen, if you're not already skilled at being able to make themselves expose themselves to everyone around them, and you're someone who isn't very witty or very good at coming back with things and bringing facts back, or someone who can't hang with them, it's better for you not to even start the conversation, because here's what's going to happen. They're going to outwit you. That's what the Bible talks about. Lest you be a fool also. It's like someone said, it'd be like this. I have a comeback for that. Just give me a minute. You're the wrong person to be engaging with them, okay? You're the wrong person to be engaging with them. Because what you're doing is you are confirming the stereotype that Christians are stupid. And that Christians are ignorant and don't know what they're talking about. A fool is not someone who's always intellectually lacking. They're just someone who's not self-aware of their ignorance of things they don't want to acknowledge. Right. But they may be very smart and very witty. If you're not sharp, don't engage, all right? At that point, though, if you do and they smash you like that, it is too late. You have been branded by them and everyone else. You have been branded by them and everyone else. And Jesus says it like this in Luke 16, verse 8. For the children of this world are in their generation wiser than the children of light. That was Luke 16, 8. Jesus is saying there are going to be people who are sinners, unbelievers, who will be able to outwit Christians if Christians don't continue to grow in knowledge. It's a very important thing to the Lord that we learn and grow in knowledge. If you want to get anything across to a foolish person, you have to refer to verse number 3. What's verse number 3 say at the end? A rod for the fool's back. That's all they understand. Yes, sir. In other words, they only respond to painful consequences, whether it's in the physical form. Okay, you got people who do stupid stuff and they get the cops get called on them and they want to go and try to outrun the cops or outrun a canine dog or try to fight a cop and they get tackled by 10 cops. They only understand physical form of painful consequences. There are other painful consequences. There's physical, missed opportunities. They would have given it to you, but they recognize that you're not ready for that. Or some other life-affecting event. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here, but a lot of people, they want to sow to the flesh, but they want to reap blessings. That's not how the world works. Right. Let's go on here. Verse 6. I said I want to get to verse 12, so we're going to try to get there. He that sendeth a message by the hand of a fool cutteth off the feet and drinketh damage. Now Solomon, God really through Solomon, is dealing with fools from verses 1 through 12. So we want to get to verse 12 tonight. Again, there's only one word for this kind of person. He that sendeth a message by the hand of a fool cutteth off the feet. There's only one word for that. What was my word? Do you remember? Ouch. Ouch. Remember the couple of weeks ago we talked about the broken tooth and the foot out of joint when you trust a fool in a time of emergency, and it's like a broken tooth and a foot out of joint. Ouch. Well, here it says what? If you send a message by the hand of a fool, what do? You cut your feet off. That's a double ouch. And I guess you could say you really are feeling defeated, huh? All right, here we go. Somebody needed to smile around here. And others are not going to smile no matter what. That's all right. Ouch. And others will get it at 2 o'clock in the morning. Defeated, I get it. Okay, here we go. Now in the previous two verses 4 and 5, don't be hating, right? Don't be hating on the good stuff. In verses 4 and 5, Solomon dealt with the incompetency of the fool. Okay? In verses 4 and 5, he dealt with the incompetency of the fool. In this verse, Proverbs 26, verse 6, he deals with the person who entrusts important business to the fool. Now, that's even worse, isn't it? When you know someone's all tore up and you still want to give them an important job. By important, we mean it's got to be done or else it really affects the whole operation. Doesn't mean you don't give a foolish person a job. You just give them something that's not going to affect much if they don't do it or if they mess it up or don't show up. We can only blame incompetent people for so long. Okay? You can only blame incompetent people for so long. I'm talking about the fool now, verses 4 and 5. This will help you. If you ever pick up leadership positions, this right here will help you, what I'm about to teach. But if we employ incompetent people in some important business, then we bring the consequences upon ourselves. We do. Well, I want to give them another chance, and I want to really give them another chance this time. If after 2 or 3 chances they keep letting you down and falling through and dropping the ball, there comes a point at which you say, I'll do it myself, or I'll find someone else. See, the Bible has a lot to say to a lot of people, doesn't it?
Yes, sir.
It has a lot to say to the follower, the employee, has a lot to say to the leader, the manager, the boss. Solomon was a great king. He knew all about these things. It does matter who you let do certain important things, and it's important to ensure you do not let the wrong person do those important things. Very important. There are certain reasons why I do not entrust certain things in this church to certain people. And there are certain reasons why I do entrust certain things to certain people. See, people might look at this as just some small operation when they're part of something big like the army or a big business or whatever, but it's really bigger than any of those things because it has to do with eternity.
Right.
It has to do with eternity. And so, for my conscience before God, there are certain reasons I don't give certain jobs to certain people, and there are certain reasons I do give certain jobs to other people. I run this church as I would run a large-scale business. Otherwise, let's go on here. It's very important you give certain things to certain people and not to others. Otherwise, rather than saving you some extra work, what they will do is what? Create more work for you. You ever had that happen?
Yes, sir.
They create more work for you. They get sidetracked, they do it wrong, they do it their way instead of the way you ask them to, etc., etc. Verse 7 of Proverbs 26.
Mm-hmm.
The legs of the lame are not equal, so is a parable in the mouth of fools. Just as it's noticeably awkward for a lame person to walk, so it is when a foolish person tries to act wise and pass on wisdom to others. I've seen that. Maybe you have too. Someone who is known to be just not someone who knows a lot, but they want to share their great pearls of wisdom with you about something. Here's what I have found works. Okay, thank you. And that's it. They just want to be heard. They just want to be heard. I've learned to not engage. Oh, okay, thank you. They want to sow foolish decisions in life. They want to sow them, foolish decisions in life, and then complain when they reap the consequences and find out that no one takes them seriously. Church, God can help you be taken seriously. Did you know that?
Yes, sir.
You don't get taken seriously by not being serious. God wants to help Christians. He wants to help us be taken seriously. First by God, and then by other Christians, and then by the world. So they complain about the consequences after sowing foolish decisions in life. Then, of course, their foolish ways come back, and they wonder why no one takes them seriously because they're not what? Self-aware. Okay. Why is everybody always picking on me? That's an old song from like the 60s, right? They're not self-aware. This is usually a never-ending cycle in their lives. Verse 8. Believe it or not, the fool is going to have some hope here in just a moment, okay? Hang with me.
Okay.
You're getting your feelings hurt? Just hang with me, all right? The fool's got some hope here in just a few. Verse 8. As he that bindeth a stone in a sling, so is he that giveth honor to a fool. As a thorn goeth up into the hand of a drunkard, so is a parable in the mouth of fools. When you put a stone in a sling, it's meant to be ready so you can sling it out. Think of a slingshot, right? It's meant to be ready to be slung out. If you bind it, look at what he says here, verse 8, as he that bindeth a stone in a sling. If you bind it or secure it into the sling, it becomes useless, doesn't it? Imagine trying to sling a stone, but the stone is tied into the sling. All it's going to do is just keep slinging around inside there, isn't it? This is the way it is when you show honor to a foolish person. It's a useless venture.
Yes, sir.
It's a useless venture. Again, what is the fool? Not just someone who's loud and obnoxious and all that. That is in context here. But remember what we just read. What did we just read? Psalm 14. The fool says no to God. The fool says, no, God. And so that right there should help a Christian to want to say, yes, God,
Amen.
because that's the way God looks at a foolish person. If you say no to me, God says, you are the fool, not me. That goes for all of us, by the way, you and me.
Yes.
Showing honor to a foolish person is a useless venture, like securing a stone in a sling and then trying to sling it out. Some people try to use the showing of honor as a way to keep someone from leaving. I've seen that in church. Church is the worst place for that. And here's the reason. Because most people won't leave a job because they get money, okay? But it's easy to leave a church. Just get your feelings hurt one good time. It's easy to leave a church. I have no leverage on anybody except their love of God. That's all I have. That's all I have. And so I have seen people try to use honoring someone, and when I say honoring someone who should not be getting that honor, I mean give them a job in the church when they're not even showing themselves capable or faithful. Give them some honor to keep them coming around. But that doesn't work because their heart isn't changed. Even if you do honor them, their heart isn't changed. This is why honor must be sincere and deserved. Otherwise, it will not be taken seriously by the one receiving it or the ones who see it being done. Remember last week we taught that if you show honor to foolish people and you do not honor the ones who are actually contributing, then you lose your the people look at you in a different way. They don't trust your judgment, do they? As the one doing the honor, they don't trust you anymore. And it cheapens the honor, doesn't it? All right, verse 9. First half of that verse. As a thorn goeth up into the hand of a drunkard. Let's talk about that. Whereas someone who is sober could just pull the thorn out with tweezers, someone who is drunk does not have the judgment and control to do that. So the thorn causes them more harm, doesn't it? Because they can't get it out. That second half. So is a parable in the mouth of fools. Here's where he draws it together. As the thorn is more likely to do harm to the drunk who cannot control themselves enough to remove it, so also parables and wise words in the mouth of the fool, so are parables and wise words in the mouth of the fool, who cannot control themselves, and therefore their words will do more harm than good. See how it comes together? The words will do more harm. A foolish person will use their words to hurt people rather than help people. A foolish person will use their position to hurt people rather than help people. Let's go on. Verse 10. The great God that formed all things both rewardeth the fool and rewardeth transgressors. Many people make the mistake of thinking that because God's judgment hasn't happened to them yet, it will never happen. We talked about that in Q&A last night, didn't we? People make the mistake of thinking that God hasn't judged me yet, so therefore he will never judge me. Peter says this in 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 3 and 4. He says, knowing this first, that there shall come in the last days scoffers, walking after their own lusts, and saying, he says, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, or in other words, since old times, all things continue as they were from the beginning of the creation. Peter said that's going to happen in the last days. Aren't we seeing that today?
Yes, sir.
People scoffing at God, making fun of the things of God, maybe not verbally, but by the way they live. They walk after their own lust. They basically are saying, where's Jesus? He said he's coming. Where's he at? He hasn't come yet. We talked about in the Q&A, I shared, I believe it's in the book of Mark, Jesus said that I'm going to come back in a time where people don't expect me to. He said, and if the servant, now notice what he said, if the servant, notice they're a servant at one point in their lives, they begin to get drunk with the drunkards, he said, then I'm going to return, I'm going to judge those servants. That right there in itself shows that you can be a servant of God, forfeit that servanthood, go back to being with the drunkards and sinners, and when the Lord returns, you will not go with him. That's what he's telling us there. That's why he says, I say unto you as I say unto all. Jesus is talking to his disciples when he says this, by the way. He says, I say unto you like I say unto everybody. In other words, you don't have special privileges here outside of me. He said, I say unto you like I say unto all, watch. Watch. Well, I prayed a prayer one time. I'm in. I'm good. And Jesus says, no, I'm telling you like I'm telling everybody, watch. Verse 11. As a dog returneth to his vomit, so a fool returneth to his folly. Now notice here, this verse is a little bit different. This is where and it may seem from the outset, it may not seem to be the case, but this is where the fool has a little bit of hope. Okay? This verse is a little bit different. Why? The use of the word returneth shows that the fool was making progress away from their foolishness. You catch that? You can't return to something unless you first go away from it, right?
Right.
The fool, a foolish person, an arrogant, obnoxious, non-self-aware person who thinks they know everything when they know nothing and won't admit it, they have hope to stop being a fool. You know how to stop being a fool? Let someone teach you how to stop being a fool. First thing God does is teach us what a fool is, right?
Yes, sir.
And then he wants to teach us what a fool does not do. But right here, he's showing us, by the word returneth, it shows that the fool is making progress. It's like someone who began to start acting more mature and responsible and may even have begun to earn people's trust. But what happens to them? They go right back into what they used to be. That speaks to me of it's possible not to be a fool. All right? But what is one of the key factors of a foolish person? They don't know they're a fool. They don't know it. It's like someone who's loud and obnoxious, but they're not self-aware. It's a dangerous person, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
It's almost like they just couldn't help themselves, and their foolishness and childishness took over again. This doesn't have to happen, but this is giving us an image of what happened, of what happens when it does happen. This is how God views it when this person does this. Like a dog lapping up its own vomit, okay? The Bible is very illustrative. The Bible is very picturesque. Well, I'm so cool with God. I'm not cool with anybody who does that. Just saying. It could be someone who used to need things like alcohol, video games, movies, or some other stimulant to make themselves feel good. You know, the Bible teaches about people like that, who need their bodies to feel good. The Bible talks about whose God is their belly. You ever read that before? Their God is their belly. Love me some food. I gotta have it. Oh, movies and video games, and oh, this make myself feel good. That's what the Bible's talking about. Their God is their belly. What did Esau sell his birthright for? Does anybody know?
Beans.
A bowl of beans. I love them beans. You making my favorite, Jacob. Eating them up. Who cares about this birthright? I don't need that. What good is it doing me right now? In other words, I'm still on the earth. God hasn't, brought me to heaven or whatever. What good is this birthright doing me? I'm hungry. There are people who love food more than they love God. And really, they don't love food. It's not that they love food, okay? It really isn't. And I've been here, I've pastored for years. I've seen multiple people like this. It's not the first time. It's never going to be the last time. It's not the food, okay? Food is good. Anybody like food? I like food, okay? Great. It's the pleasuring of the body. Not just I'm pointing out my stomach, but it's every part of the body. It's the pleasuring of the body. There have been people who have come and gone that some of you will never know, whom I've had to pastor these things and teach these things to. Very same thing. I've seen it over and over. They are basically modern-day Esau's. They love their body more than they love God. What's he talking about? These are people who need things like movies, video games, food. People use food to comfort themselves. People who are depressed, they'll use food because they're trying to calm their body. They need video games and other stimulants to make themselves feel good. But these are people who moved on from that. Okay? Now follow me now. The fool has a hope, okay? I'm telling you, the fool has a hope. These are people who moved on from that. And they began to find their satisfaction in God.
Amen.
Okay? They realized, I don't need the drugs, the alcohol, the women, the video games and movies, and I don't need the the flesh satisfying things. I found something in God. With me tonight?
Yes, sir.
Hope so. God's trying to help you tonight. And then for whatever reason, they went back to depending on those things for their pleasures and satisfaction again. Just like a child.
Mm-hmm.
See, children do what feels good. Adults do what's necessary. And if we're people who need to feel good before we do right, we haven't left our childhood. Up here.
Yes, sir.
It doesn't matter how old your body is. If your mind has not matured, we're still in the childhood stage. If we have to feel good before we do, we're still as a child. What do mature, responsible adults do? We do what's right, and we know we'll feel good afterwards. I don't have to feel good first. I know I'll feel good later. There are some things that I do almost on a daily basis that I cannot stand, all right? I try to exercise most every day. I don't like that. It hurts, okay? But I don't want to be decrepit at 55.
Right.
I don't want to be decrepit at 95. If I live that long, I still want to be going and going, all right?
Amen.
But we do those things.
Mm-hmm.
I practice my trumpet almost every day or every other day because I play for our national conferences. I don't like doing that because it takes a lot of energy and a lot of time, a lot of focus and patience, and some days are better than others, whatever. But what I'm bringing out is I feel great after I've done it. It just feels good to know I did my exercises, to know I got the practice done, to know this, that, and the other. Am I making sense tonight?
Yes, sir.
The foolish person has to feel good, and they would rather feel good than please God. That's why they will say no to God, because they want to say yes to themselves. This may not be for anybody in this church, but I'm going to teach it because it's in Proverbs. It's just like a dog going back to lap it up. Brothers and sisters, this is really how God sees it. That's how God sees it. It's not, well, I'm still cool with the man upstairs. No, you're not. No, I'm not. Can I just make it personal? Okay, I'll make it personal to me. I'll do like Paul did in the, where was that? I believe it was in the book of 1 Corinthians. He just applied everything to himself. He said, look, if I'm the one who does wrong, I'll be cast away. But to the observant person, we know what Paul was doing there, right? He was basically saying, look, it applies to all of us. Verse 12. Seest thou a man wise in his own conceit? There is more hope of a fool than of him. Okay, again, God gives the fool some hope. Okay? One of the best things that a foolish person can do is come to the point where they say, you know what? I am a biblical fool. Man, what a glorious day that is. They don't have to say it to me. You don't have to come confess anything. All right? Because you know how I'll see it?